Still pretty stormy in the Northeast tonight. We have a slew of winter storm warnings, high wind warnings, wind advisories, and boy, it is howling based on what some of the observations I looked at a little while ago. The first winter storm watches are up with the next storm system across the central and southern plains, and that'll be heading eastward. We've got winter storm warnings up in the northern Rockies too, and we have I don't even want extreme cold weather warnings up for the Dakotas, which means that it's going to be extremely cold. You better watch it. And by the way, what the models giveth, the models have taken away, and we'll talk about that on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And of course, it's so easy to support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. You can do it by doing your Amazon shopping using our referral link. It's very easy. Just click on the link. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this podcast. And just search and do your shopping, and Amazon throws us back a little coin for sending you there. And it doesn't cost you a dime. And I know some of you have done this for us, and some of you may consider it. We appreciate your support of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast by shopping on Amazon, because if you do, I don't have to run commercials during the show. So I noticed today, the first thing I noticed when I got up was that everybody was still struggling, except for the immediate coast. And even there, it was only in the mid 30s. All inland areas struggled all morning and into the afternoon just to get above the 32-degree mark. So you must have had some fairly significant icing during the overnight.
Yeah, actually what we had about an inch and a half of snow yesterday, and then came the freezing precipitation on top of that, which kind of mushed everything down as anticipated. This morning, what I had to do is I had to go out and scrape that. Actually, what I did was I got rid of a lot of the snow off my driveway and off my deck last night in anticipation of the possibility of icing overnight, and I'm glad I did that. But Joe, cold air damming. I mean, really, the models. There's one thing the models cannot handle properly is cold air damming. I was looking at the forecasts, the 12Z forecasts, the MOS
Right.
model statistic forecast for both the GFS and also for the NAM. And what I did was I took the 1 o'clock observations for a number of different places in and around the Hudson Valley, and then I made a comparison to what the 12Z MOS forecasts were saying. Now, the 12Z MOS forecast for both the GFS and the NAM start at 18Z, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I figured, okay, let me see how this is all lining up. And I want to tell you here, 34 degrees at White Plains. That was the forecast. That was not the forecast. That was the actual temperature at White Plains this afternoon. According to the NAM, the temperature should have been 36. According to the GFS, again, starting out at 18Z, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the temperature was supposed to be 47. So there was a 13-degree difference between the initialized data and what actually was taking place. 13-degree difference between the 47 that the GFS said was going to be the temperature at White Plains at 1 o'clock versus the actual temperature, which was only 34. Here in Putnam Valley, we struggled all morning long. The temperature was hovering between 31 and 32, 31, 32, 31. Finally, by about noontime, it got up to 33. And I think our high today at my house, 35. 35 was the best we were able to work with, 3 degrees above freezing. And that plus the fact that it rained on top of the ice and the fact that I was scraping and Renato was scraping as well, we were able to get rid of at least 90% of the ice problem on our driveway and on our deck and the side of our house and everything else. And thank God we did it, because now as we move into the overnight, it's going to be getting colder. Whatever you didn't do to what's out there right now is going
You
to
won't be
freeze
able to do.
solid. You won't be able to do it. It'll be rock solid by tomorrow. And that's how it's going to be for much of this week. The next time we'll see temperatures go above freezing here probably won't be until Friday and next weekend at the earliest.
Meanwhile, Central and South Jersey got well into the 50s. Long Island also broke out and went up above 50 degrees in a few places too. And you're right, models have never really handled cold air damming very well. And that has been the story since you and I started. They never ever have, that is something that has probably not improved very much at all in the last 30 years, is the way the models handle cold air damming in the
There
East.
has been improvement in the models in a number of different facets. They do things a lot better in many ways than, let's say, the old LFM, 2.LFM, or the primitive equation, the PE models. Yeah, there are things that today's models do a lot better, but the one thing that they all fall in line with that they don't do well is the handling of cold air damming. The low, shallow, dense layer of cold air that, unfortunately, the models seem to want to scour out a lot quicker than what actually happens. And today was a perfect example of that, with the temperatures struggling to make it out of the freeze above freezing here in the Hudson Valley. You're right. Down by the coastal plain, the warming trend is takes place a lot quicker. But here, it was a struggle all through much of the day today.
Just in the middle of chastising somebody. You know, if you're going to come on and say, really, it's stupid crap. First of all, everybody stop acting like 5-year-olds, okay? Because that's what everybody's acting like, 5-year-olds. And James Davidson, to say things like the snowstorms are a thing of the past and are never going to happen again is really one of the most ignorant statements that you can make. If you call yourself a weather person, if you call yourself a weather enthusiast, okay, that is just dumb. It is dumb. Okay. Joe, am I right here? To say something like that is just dumb.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've been doing more shoveling the last 2 weeks. James David, you want to come up to my house and help me out with my snow blowing and my snow shoveling? I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And people, it's so funny, Joe. People getting all excited last week. If I had $1 for every person over the last 2 or 3 days. So, Joe, tell us about the blizzard on Thursday. Tell us about the big snowstorm. And now that it has gotten out that the models are beginning to tilt more toward an out to sea scenario,
Right. Yeah.
and that could change. That could change. And I want to talk to our dear friend, Mr. Rubin here, who
I'm
says, well,
sure we're
Joe
going to
Ray was
avoid it.
all, yeah, I mean, Joe Ray was all in on for a snowstorm. Obviously, and we even made the comment yesterday. We were on at 11 o'clock, and a couple of people said, hey, where's Rubin? If you had been tuned in yesterday, Ruben, you would have heard me say that it's not all over yet. I mean, we really can't say things can change. It does look good, but we don't have enough data inputted into the guidance so that we can be confident of a forecast of a big snowstorm on Thursday. And certainly, a lot could happen. Now things have changed. Now everybody's all the people who are all jumping up and down, they've thrown in the white,
Right.
flag.
They've thrown in the towel. Now, look,
It's all over.
listen,
It's all over.
to be
But it can
fair,
change.
after we were on yesterday morning, every run of model guidance after that has been a mess. It went from showing what it showed to what it's now showing, and I get that. When we said yesterday, I said yesterday, Joe was with me on this. We're going to wait till tomorrow. Um, I know a number of you are hanging on the Nam run from today, which shows the low
KG
climbing
Nam, I
up the
saw that.
coast. Look,
I saw
and
that.
yeah, and the Nam has done, the Nam every once in a while. They used to do it all the time. Now it's every once in a while. As and I saw that this afternoon. I thought, okay, Well, let's see if the 18Z models maybe try to come back a little bit. And as they were coming out in order, the Icon actually went from pitching a shutout to giving at least a few inches up to New York City and Long Island, and 5 or 6 inches down in South Jersey and Point South. So I thought, all right, well that's a start. The GFS was not didn't really move further west. The European at 18Z did not move further west. So I said I was going to wait till tomorrow to throw in the towel. It'll give us, I'm thinking through the 12Z run tomorrow. So you got 3 runs of model guidance to get through. If by 12Z tomorrow there's no significant change, then we could definitely just throw this out. I mean, I think there's still a chance that we could see some snow because you got this upper low that's going to be moving through, and that might enhance some of the moisture from off the ocean, and maybe somebody gets a coating to a few inches. But at least from the standpoint of if you get away from southern New Jersey, which has had more snow than anybody else in this area for the most part this year, southern New Jersey southward, if you get away from that, we've been in a nickel and dime year, and we've been getting these nickel and dime systems, so maybe this one could wind up being a nickel and dime system come Thursday. 12Z is the Greenwich Mean Time is 7 a.m. So that's the model guidance that starts coming out at around 9 o'clock for the NAM, 10:30 for the GFS, and 12:15 for the European. So that's how that goes. So anyhow,
Let me just read. This directly off of my Facebook forecast today, and of course, naturally, after I read it, somebody's going to interpret it completely different and say, "Hey, did you hear what Joe Rayo said?" But I'm going to read it anyway, and this is exactly what I put out and posted about 3 or 4 hours ago. Quote: A storm will develop over the Louisiana Gulf Coast on Wednesday and moves to a position a couple of hundred miles east of the mid-Atlantic coast on Thursday. There has been talk in recent days that this system will deliver the biggest snowfall of the winter to the tri-state area. And before I continue with this, let me tell you, Joe, how I miss Alan Casper. And I know you miss him. I miss him. A lot of people who grew up with Alan Casper, and I hope Alan's watching. We miss you, Alan, because Alan used to hover over the fax machine. Alan used to look at everything right up until the moment when he stepped in front of the camera. And last night, the GFS at just before 11 o'clock was showing that the storm looked like it was taking a path more out to sea, and that we would have only it was some snow, but not a whole heck of a lot, not a big storm. And there was one forecaster last night on the 11 o'clock news. I will not mention what station, I will not mention the name, but he said, and of course, there's Thursday, and Thursday looks like we could have the biggest storm of the year, the biggest winter storm of the season. And I'm looking at Renat and I'm saying, did he look at the GFS? Did he look at the latest data that just is coming out? Did he take a look at that and at least put a little bit of a disclaimer into that? No, he's building up a big storm. Meanwhile, there's still a modicum of uncertainty with all of this,
right.
but yet he's making it out like it's going to be a major storm. And I say to myself, how I wish Alan was on the air and looking at the latest information coming off of the fax machine. Back then it was the LFM, but still, looking at it and saying, well, I've just taken a look at the latest information and it doesn't look like we may have the storm that we've been. That's what I was waiting to hear. And, instead I get, well, and there's still that chance of a big storm. Now, we may still get a big storm on Thursday, but there's lots of uncertainty. Let me go back to my original, what I posted on Facebook. I said there has been talk in recent days that this system will deliver the biggest snowfall of the winter to the tri-state area. However, recent model guidance has been trending toward a track more offshore, which would put the lion's share of the snowfall out to sea. It is still a bit early in the game to pull the whistle string and declare that a big winter storm is coming. And so while I will mention a chance of, quote, some snow for Thursday, I feel it best to wait another day, and then I put in parentheses, or two, before committing to any potential numbers regarding possible accumulations. There. I've said it. Now let's see somebody on the chat board or somebody down the road say, Rayo said that we're going to be getting a big storm, or Rayo said we're not getting a big storm. At this point, when you become a meteorologist, I'm sure Rich Rockmansky will agree with me on that on the chat board. You have to also major in one other thing, and that is tap dancing. Because
Well,
no forecast beyond 3 days or 4 days is there a surety or a certainty. No forecast. And so, for all of you who've been saying, somebody said, Joe, what's going to happen on Thursday? What's Thursday all about? And I wrote back. I said, well, I see by the calendar that Thursday is National Muffins Day, which is true. So if you're into muffins, you can have a muffin on me on Thursday. I didn't say anything about any blizzards or snowstorms or whatever. And what are you going to do and what are you going to say?
I know. I listen. I said on my Weather in a Minute video, I said that at the end of it, I mentioned about the storm for later this week. And I said that it looks like, at least for now, it looks like the chances for something significant up here seems far less likely. And somebody took me to task for that. So, you know, look,
What are we doing this for,
I don't
Joe?
have a vested interest. Neither of us have a vested interest one way or the other how these things turn out. They turn out how they turn out. Um, if listen, we could go years without seeing a major snowstorm. That's just the way it works. Meanwhile, if you want snow, get in your car. It's not too long a drive, and drive down to Virginia Beach because they may get a foot there. Drive down into northeastern North Carolina. Drive down to Richmond. What can I tell you? That's where it's been this winter, and that's where it's going. Um, it's the world we operate in. People want certitude in their lives. They want somebody to tell them definitely what's going to happen. Listen, if you want certitude, there are two things you can do. Pay your taxes and die. Those are two certain things that you do. Okay? And everything else is up for grabs. And that's the end of that. Um, Craggy Stern, thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight. And also, we had a earlier hit from Ken Musillo. Thank you for hitting Super Chat tonight. Any chance it changes? Well, there's always a chance it changes. We're still about 96 hours away. I mean, we've had it. If you think back to the snow system we had last winter in the middle of February, that changed in 48 hours. Boston went from having 20, the models giving it 20 inches, and they didn't see a flake. And with the heaviest snow, wound up sinking southward just within the last 48 hours. Could it change? Yeah, but there's a lot of things in the atmosphere that have to change in order for that to happen. And we will go through all that. But first, we got to chew through what's going on right now. And this storm is really wrapped up into an absolute animal in New England, and that's part of the issue here because what this storm does is going to impact the one behind it. We still have winter storm warnings up for all of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, uh, much of Massachusetts, much of northern New York, especially north of I-90. There are some counties south of I-90 in the upper Hudson Valley that have, uh, and even the middle Hudson Valley that have lingering winter storm warnings up. Lake effect snow warnings in north central New York. Winter weather advisories running down from western New York down into West Virginia. They've got blizzard warnings up for a couple of counties in northeastern West Virginia, Garrett County in Maryland, and into a couple of counties in southwest PA. Winter storm warnings for northwest PA for uh, the uh, the shorefront in northeast Ohio, including Cleveland.
106 likes, Joe.
Lovely. Uh, High wind warnings and wind advisories down into Virginia and the mountains of North Carolina. We had some wicked severe weather this morning in Georgia. Didn't get. I mean, I was on the northern edge of it, and it really wasn't terrible here. We had some thunderstorms and some heavy rain, but they had numerous severe thunderstorms and tornadoes in and around the confirmed tornadoes around the Atlanta area. There were some fatalities involved as well. I mean, it was a really, really rough early morning in much of Georgia. Advisories are also up for much of South Central and Southwest Ohio. We've got winter weather advisories that are posted in parts of northern Missouri, back up and through Nebraska. Winter storm warnings are already up in the southern part of Missouri. Winter storm watches extending back into Kansas. We've got the green. I don't know what kind of green that is. That goes down into Texas. That's all cold weather advisories. It's cold weather. We're advising you of it. Extreme cold weather warnings from Minnesota into Montana. Winter storm warnings for much of the state of Montana, western Wyoming, the Cascades in Washington and Oregon, northern Idaho. There's a ton of winter weather. And we even have some avalanche warnings up and down the middle of Utah and just to the west of Denver. We've got some avalanche warnings and winter storm warnings at the same time. So this is definitely a winter looking map here. This cold front, very impressive, and the storm itself has moved up into northern New England. Very impressive cold front that moved through the south and southeast and now is offshore. It's also passed through New Jersey and Long Island and now moving offshore southeastern eastern New England. And the next couple of days, this wind is going to be a problem right through tomorrow afternoon, I think.
I think, I'm looking at all of this wintry weather, and then going back to the beginning of the show where, oh, winter's over, winter's dead, we're never going to see winter again. Well, maybe not in the New York, maybe in the New York metropolitan. I mean, I'm still reeling over that statement, and I mean, this is probably the most wintry picture that we've had locally here in the Northeast in the last 2 or 3 years. So uh, I don't know. I'm still in a state of
Yeah,
disbelief.
no, because some people think that you're supposed to be cold every single day, and it's supposed to snow from November 1st to April 30th every single day. That's obviously you live in some delusional world if you think along those lines. As you live in a delusional world, if you go around saying that it's never going to snow ever again, okay? Another more energy is coming into the west, and you can see that in the form of all these clouds that have rolled in, and some of that energy is going to be part of the equation for the next storm system that's going to take shape. Radar tonight, busy in the Northeast. It's snowing throughout much of upstate New York, Syracuse, North Central New York, Albany. Didn't report on the hour, but the radar shows some snow over them as well. You can see some of the lake effect stuff that's going on in western New York and back up into Ohio and western PA down into West Virginia, flurries down into Kentucky and southern Ohio, and into a little area in northern Indiana. Looks like some snow showers have just moved out of Indianapolis. Out in the west, we got the radars loaded up, moving into Washington and Oregon, and you've got patches of snow throughout much of the northwestern part of the U.S. Storm Prediction Center, I'm going to jump to Tuesday into Wednesday. I'm sorry. Tuesday into Wednesday, a marginal risk for coastal southeast Texas and the southern part of Louisiana. That's where the severe weather is for this week. And WPC is only showing a tenth to a quarter of an inch of liquid this week for southern New England, New York City, down to southern New Jersey, the half inch touching Cape May. And then what you see down in the Delmarva Peninsula, southeast Virginia, into North Carolina, that's where you're probably going to see some heavy snow. And also, you'll probably see some snow in Tennessee and Kentucky, back into Western Virginia, Western North Carolina. And we've got a half to three quarters of an inch here in southern Missouri and southeast Kansas, northeast Oklahoma, and northernmost Arkansas. That is going to be, that's where we have the winter storm watches and winter storm warnings up. Heavier precip up in the northwest, big precip up along the west coast. I thought I'd take a look first, Mr. Rayo. This is the 500 millibar, 18,000 foot level, roughly, of what's going on. And, we look at surface maps clearly, but, you got to look at these upper air maps because that's really the most important thing to see how this is all playing out. And I'm just going to show you, what's happening. The areas of red and yellow here. These are the strongest winds. So this is your jet stream, and here we are. Uh, this is actually for Monday morning, 1 a.m. You can see the deep trough that's in the east. You can also see there's a deep upper low that's south of Greenland here, that is just sitting out there. And you have all this energy in the Pacific that's rolling in. Now I'm going to move this along. You're going to see that trough in the east is going to pull out, and then you're going to see it's kind of like an arm that extends back into North Dakota and Minnesota. A new upper low forms here. Now we're into early. This is late Tuesday night. It's 10 o'clock Tuesday night. That upper low begins to drop southeastward. Now here's the problem with this. If you notice out in the Atlantic, the winds in the Atlantic are straight westerly from Virginia all the way out to the Azores. And then they get wrapped around this upper low that moves a little bit eastward to between Greenland and Iceland to the south of both the islands. But you have a pretty much a straight line ruler jet stream in the Atlantic. And you need something out there to buckle the jet stream up so that any storm system that tries to form in the east is going to want to climb up the east coast. This upper low digs, and you look at this, Joe, and you see, okay, well, there's south southwest winds here Wednesday night and Thursday morning. You think that would lift the storm up, take the surface low and bring it up. But the problem is that the energy with that southern feature is already sitting out pretty far to the east. So it doesn't get caught by that upper low in a sense. So now all you're left with is that upper low feature, and that triggers off a little bit of snow as it goes by. But we saw models this weekend. We saw them yesterday and on Friday. Just basically making a full trough here, upper low, deep upper low. Full southerly winds going all the way up into New England. I mean, that would have been, that's what you need to have happen to bring a storm up the East Coast, and it's just not there. It's just too flat from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, the what they had was appeared to be a negatively tilted trough, which by the time it got to the mid-Atlantic or Northeast was actually beginning to close off. And that's something we have not really seen with any storm so far. All of these have been rapidly moving waves of low pressure moving in a fast jet stream that has brought, even in the cases where we've had, the rare cases we had like an inch or even 1 or 2 inches of snow, it's moved so quickly that, you didn't have time to put down a whole heck of a lot, much beyond, let's say, 3 to 5 or 4 to 8 inches. And the fact that it looked a few days ago like we were going to actually have a system that was actually going to close off into an upper low, oh, now we're in business. Now we're going to slow everything down, and the snow is going to stick around for a much longer interval of time and has a chance to pile up, and we might get a foot, and everybody will be happy or whatever. But that's
Well, not everybody would be happy, but go on.
well, yeah, I understand, but now it's completely different. But again, as I said yesterday, the models for the past days up until yesterday, the algorithms or whatever equations that they use, they're taking into account in their own numerical way what they think is going to transpire. And it's not until you get more data into those supercomputers, which will begin happening tonight and especially so tomorrow and Tuesday, that we'll be able to refine and get a much better handle as to exactly how these storms are going to track and where they're going to track and whether or not they're going to intensify. That's the key. Again, I keep saying that, when you're within 3 or 3.5 days of the event, that's when you can start looking at things and saying, okay, here we go. Now we've got enough information that we can make some good educated guesses. And as the closer you get to the event, the better your accuracy is going to be. When you start making forecasts and showing maps and making projections, 5, 6, 7 days out, you're asking for trouble, and that's exactly what happens more often than not.
Now, a number of you have mentioned the NAM model, and I'm showing it here. And you can see the weather system coming out to the east on Tuesday. Snow through Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, even into northernmost North Carolina, a little freezing rain there. Low center that's down in southwest Georgia, then jumps into northeastern North Carolina, and then from there it's just right along the northeastern coast of North Carolina. By Thursday at 1 a.m., it's got a tucked in low near the Delmarva Peninsula, and it's got dark blue snow up to Long Island and into the lower Hudson Valley to New York City and points south. Okay, well, why is it doing that? Well, this is the NAMS picture of the upper air at that time. And for whatever reason, the model seems to be showing this upper low diving southeastward and digging more than what the other models are showing. Pops more of a ridge to the east. You see the upper air winds back more to the south southwest. I mean, I can't see beyond 84 hours, so I don't know if it'll start kicking the low east. It just makes it, it tucks it in closer and then winds up taking it east anyway. But the upper air here is what you saw on the European a couple of days ago, what you saw on the various runs of the GFS and on the Icon. Uh, the uh, the the NAM is holding on to this notion, uh, but the other models are a whole
And
lot
you,
flatter. If you
and,
look at
and
the
before you change, Joe, you see how on the NAM, how the lines, the height lines, seem to get very tight, directly below and slightly to the left of the closed system. We call that diffluence, a very diffluent upper air, a digger, if you will. And the more that the storm digs like that, the more likely you're going to end up with a rather intense storm system. But again, as you just pointed out, Joe, while the other models, the global models, the European and the GFS, were showing some semblance of this a few days ago, they have backed off
yes,
from, and now you're going to show us what those models are going to
right.
are.
So if we go to the GFS, which I will do now, you'll see the upper low is back over Chicago, and if you look at it. If you looked at what the NAM had, this is much more stretched out. I mean, look how you've got an arm here that goes. The NAM was kind of like this. Uh, the GFS is stretched back all the way into the Dakotas. I mean, it's just this amorphous mess. And while that upper low is near Chicago, your surface low is somewhere out here. It's going that way. So that's an issue. And then of course the upper low just kind of swings along, and you can't really do much
The
with
up,
that. I mean,
the
it's
upper
great if
low, the upper low on the GFS is kind of like in football, the guy who punts the football. The upper low is
yes.
punting, it's punting the ball or punting the storm out to sea, and so much for the big storm on Thursday, if that indeed is the case.
Now the European has it's a much neater look on the European. It's not like the stretched out GFS. It's a little more like the NAM. The NAM is deeper than the European is, but even the European would suggest that the coastal system would probably be too far out. It'll just get kicked out to the sort of the upper low misses the surface low in a sense. Surface low gets kicked out ahead of that upper air low. So that becomes a problem, and that is a problem. In fact, if you look here, you can see the upper low is here. Here's the upper low. This is late Thursday afternoon, and then you have another one out here. This represents where the coastal system is going to be. It's already way out. You would have needed that to just sort of get captured by that upper low there, and then you could have gone to town and had a big storm. Now, no mistake. you know, either way, I mean, the areas down here in, whoops, sorry about that, the Delmarva Peninsula, Southeast Virginia. Oh, come on, there you go. Right down in here are probably going to wind up with for them, a big snowfall. I wouldn't be surprised if some areas down here wind up getting a foot, particularly Southeast Virginia. There might be some 1 foot plus snows there. This is a great setup for them. It's not a good setup for a system to want to climb up the eastern seaboard. The other thing I want to look at, since we have the SREF and also the national blend of models, which apparently is like the new thing, Joe. I don't know if you realize that.
I see a lot, I see a lot of reference to that on the technical discussions of the National Weather Service, New York and Mount Holly, always referring to the MBM, the National Blend of Models.
Well, here's the new SREF model, and this takes us to this is only out. This map only is out to hour 75, so this is Wednesday evening, and there's an upper low somewhere in Wisconsin. You can see how the jet is lined up here as it swings around. I don't know if I don't think there's a corresponding surface map to this. Uh, so they have one at least maybe with the mean sea level pressure with a 10-meter wind. So maybe that'll at least give us a clue. So this is just showing winds, by the way. It's not showing any precip. There's your low off the South Carolina coast, and that's as far as it goes. So you really don't. It really doesn't go out far enough. So this is only out 75 hours for some reason. Let's look at the snow amounts, 'cause I think those go out to 90. So that'll take us into Thursday and see what the SREF is doing. Let's do a local. These maps, by the way, are pivotal weather maps. Pivotal weather. And here we go. So let's see what the SREF is showing. Whoops. My little dot stopped moving. For some reason, the SREF is only out 75 hours. Usually by now it's done. But for some reason, it's only out 75 hours. So it doesn't go out far enough. So we're not going to get much help from that. So let's go back to the GFS. And Jeff Fowler just hit the tip jar, Joe.
I see, and he says, "Hello, friends. Great show as usual. Just had to wrap up our shoveling here in Brockton, Massachusetts, with a little thunder, flash of lightning, and a quick downpour. Busy day for sure. We didn't get any convective activity locally here in Putnam Valley, Joe, but there were times today that the rain was coming down fairly hard, all the way up until about 5 o'clock this afternoon."
Oh yeah, we watching the radars all day. It was just pretty loaded. Here's the GFS, and you can see where the surface low moves across the southern states. I just love how the models, for some reason, the border of North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia, the rain magically, it changes to snow magically once you go over that. I'm only 20 miles from that border. The European actually, I think, gave me a couple of inches of snow on Wednesday. I'll be curious to see if that verifies. But here's the low. You've got the snow that shows up in Ohio, West Virginia. Part of that is the upper low. Part of that is lake effect. So you gotta hope that sometimes these upper lows, they have their own little area of light snow. That maybe or maybe it pulls back some of the ocean moisture a little bit further to the northwest, but uh, which is what the GFS did today. Brought a little bit of snow back to Long Island and Cape Cod and maybe southern New Jersey. The European, for what that one's worth, actually gave a few inches because it's a little bit closer. This is the 12Z European run. It actually brought some accumulating snows up to the Hudson Valley and to southern Connecticut and Long Island and New Jersey. A couple of inches, a bit more as you go into southern New Jersey, but the same idea. You get a deepening low, but it just goes out too far to the east. So like I said, I said yesterday I was going to wait till Monday. I'll wait through the day runs Monday, and tomorrow night will either be. Chances are I'll be throwing in the towel, but if it looks like we may still be in business, I will say we're still in business.
We'll see.
Brandon Doherty hitting super chat.
As Yogi once said, it ain't over till it's over.
Right. He says, "Hey guys, wife and I have COVID. I'm sorry to hear. Sickness and in health. You got the sickness. Soon you'll have the health. So feel better. I got a Briller Jeopardy left from Wednesday. Unless
You
I
do,
did it.
I do.
Unless I. Well, I don't know. I have one here from Wednesday, which I only this. I think I just. I forgot I had it. I don't know if we did this one. Hang on a second. I gotta pull it up. Do you have one?
I don't think. Well, let me. I'll check. Let me. I'll check and see what I have here. And let's see, Scott Briller, and this dates back to last Tuesday. And yes, I do not have this. This was the one that we did last week, so I do not have a new one.
Okay, so I have one.
Okay.
So we'll do that. All right. So still doing snowfalls for the month of February for the following cities. We'll start with Philadelphia. Average snowfall for Philadelphia.
How about 8 inches?
Oh God, Joe, ring the bell for yourself. You
Ugh.
got it right. Right on the nose. All right, well that was a short one. Let's
Yes.
go to the next one. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Um, synoptically, I don't think Pittsburgh would have quite as much as Philadelphia, even though they're further inland and likely colder. But how about 6?
Way too low.
Okay, well,
Junior. Good to see you on the chat board, Junior. And close with 13, Mike Waterhouse Bonsai and Frank Scalera with 12. 12 for Pittsburgh. 12 for Pittsburgh. Providence. I don't.
I should,
If you want to
having
talk
done,
about a snow drought, talk to the snow lovers in Providence because they haven't gotten. They've gone a long time without even the nickel and dime snowballs have evaded them. Providence, Rhode Island.
God, I did Providence 11 years on radio. I should know this, shouldn't I? I should hit this one right on the nose. How about, I'm going to say 11. I'm going to go with Christnapedia.
And Frank R. And you could ring the bell for all three. 11.
Oh, fantastic. And that's based upon Providence T.F. Green Airport. That's their airport in Providence, Rhode Island.
Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia. Well, I said, I stupidly I said 6 for Pittsburgh. I'm going to say the same for Richmond. I'll say 6.
That's too high, Joe. It's too high.
Too high. Too
Harold
high.
Olson at 3 is close. William Uber with 3 is close. CWTR Shark with 3 is close. Rich Rothmansky with 3 is close. But Latex Dreams, Mike Waterhouse Bonsai, and Frank Scalera, 2. 2. 2 mints in one.
Really? That
Yes.
that little amount for
That's
Richmond, Virginia?
that's what it says.
Well, okay, yeah.
Rochester, New York.
Rochester. No, I'm not going to do Rochester for you, Ruben. Um,
Huh.
how about Rochester's in the snow belt? How much could they possibly have? 21.
That's a good guess. It's a little low. Rich Rothmansky gets it though. 23. Give Rich the bell.
I'm going to give Rich the bell. There you go, Rich.
And the bonus.
Serve it.
It's a little tricky. International Falls, Minnesota.
God. Either they have a very low amount because it's too cold to snow, or it's something that's like crazy off the charts or whatever. Uh,
What does your
I don't
instinct
know,
tell you?
15.
Okay, that's actually a pretty good guess. It's a little high, but not too far. Rothmansky is close with 12, and so is Maggie P with 12, and Mike Waterhouse Bonsai and Tyler Fienga 13, Joe, 13 for International Falls.
There you
And you
go.
would think it would be more in some respects because they're so far north and it's so cold, but it's also they're so far north and it's so cold is the
Yes.
reason why it's not uh, a, a bigger number. So it's 13. It's just too it's one of those places where it could literally be too cold to snow, and
I'll bet
sometimes
you.
it is.
I'll bet you that New York has had in a single storm more snow than International Fall. I mean, I'll bet you the biggest snowfall that International Falls has probably had in one sitting was something like 16 or 18 inches, as opposed to here in New York where we've got
Yeah.
like 20
Well,
and a half or what.
I was always astounded by the fact that Chicago went from 19, what was it, almost 20 years without seeing a 10-inch snowfall. I think that was from 1979 to 1998. It was like a 20-year stretch there where they did not get a single storm that produced more than 10 inches at a time.
Wow.
And you would think Chicago would get big storms, which they do from time to time, but they they had their own little stretch where people were standing out and saying it's never going to snow again.
And Tyler Fenga backs me up. He says, wow, 14.1 inches, the one day record snowfall for International Falls, Minnesota, recorded on January 10th, 1975. So it was the 50th anniversary. It's been 50 years since they had that 14.1-inch snowfall in one sitting at International Falls. And of course, here in New York, how many times did we have like 20-inch snowfalls in the last 20 years in New York City?
Right.
So,
And that was a cycle of 20 years that, is probably done.
and
Yeah,
the
you guys,
mayor.
you snow lovers should go look at New York City snowfall records goes because it goes back to 1869. You'll see some stretches in there where it doesn't, of 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 years in a row where you had below normal, below average snowfall, and no, double digit snowstorms. It just happens like that sometimes. It just does. And that's how it's, always has that way. And it probably always will to some extent.
And that 1979 storm that you mentioned in Chicago, Joe, I mean, we remember the Lindsay snowstorm in 1969, but Lindsay did not lose his mayoralty. In fact, if anything, later that year, but frankly, because he was in the Met clubhouse when they won the World Series, I think he got reelected. But nobody wanted to reelect Mayor Lindsay after that snowstorm because of the supposed poor show that he had clearing this, especially Queens, out in '69. Meanwhile, 10 years later, with that '79 snowstorm in Chicago, the mayor of Chicago, Michael Balandic, actually lost he declared an emergency before the storm finished howling. But in spite of everything, the slow response to that storm actually brought him down. It brought down a whole political empire, in fact. So this is a warning to all big city mayors: don't fool around when you have a major snowfall coming or hitting you. You got to stay on top of it. I mean, uh, we remember the outrage in 2010 when Mike Bloomberg poo-pooed a storm that dropped like what 20 inches of snow. It was the day after Christmas, the Boxing Day storm,
Right.
and he's telling people, he says, it's no big deal. Go out, see a show.
Well, it
meanwhile,
was,
and
hey,
meanwhile,
at
during
least
all of that,
it was the day
during
after
all of that, the
Christmas.
mayor,
Most
the mayor
people
was
were
in
off.
the mayor was in Bermuda when all this was happening too.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was the day after Christmas. Most people were off. The kids were out. We're on Christmas vacation. So really, it didn't really have that big an impact in terms of yeah. Okay, it was tough to get around, but it wasn't like a regular normal day. So it was nice. that was back in the past.
Yes.
And that was another instance, by the way, where the guidance gave up the ghost on that storm the day before, and then it disappeared, and then it came back.
Right. That was a tough storm to forecast.
It really was.
And this one could go away and come right back at the last minute. See? So all of you are the snow lovers out there, you still have your chance. So don't throw in the towel just yet. Maybe
But have it
something.
handy. Keep the towel nearby. We'll wait till tomorrow. Keep it there, and we'll do the towel throwing in. We'll do the towel throwing tomorrow. We'll give it one more night. I personally, from what I've seen today, I really, you know, I if you're looking for a big one, I'm thinking that that ship has already sailed. Uh, Maybe we'll still wind up with another nickel and dime event before this is all said and done. But we'll see tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow night on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And that's going to be at the regular time, 7:35 p.m. Eastern. By the way, we're only 25 subscribers to 15,000. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel and you're watching tonight for the first time, hit the subscribe button. Take us over 15,000 so that I could feel really good about
We're
things.
only 18 away from 200 likes.
I know. Well, I'm also about 18 minutes away from going to bed.
Oh,
So
okay.
I have an early day tomorrow. So
Yes, I
we'll see you
understand.
everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Okay? Nighty
Have a good
night.